Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Volpe Creates Show, the weekly, most of the time, talk show about gaming and creative technology. I am your host, Chris, joined as always by Pumpkin, who's causing noise over there, so you might hear her. Baby Girl, who's asleep over there. And, of course, Mr. Lucas. How are we today?
Oh, just a little tired from GDEX, but other than that, doing great.
Yeah, you had your first GDEX experience both as a guest and running the show. What was that like?
It was a lot. It was a lot. The show was
Where,
huge. Way.
did you did you not listen to me when I told you how much walking we'd be doing?
Oh, I trusted you, but I'm like, in my mind, I was like, it's not gonna be that bad.
A lot of
120,000
walking.
steps at the end of the week. I was just like, I just want to lay down.
Yeah, I meant to do see if I can do it here. I normally look at my, I should probably do not disturb myself like a professional. I normally look at my steps count, and this was a unique year because a 5-day event. So extra day, more steps, all sorts of good stuff.
That's so many days.
It is a lot of days. I think
That's too many days.
we're having conversation. Last year, a little behind the curtain talk here. Last year for 2021, we did in the fall, which is our normal day, GDEX, but it's normal day, and so we ended up doing the shows together, and we did a 3-day show with a 1-day load in. So Thursday load in, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the show. This year, we started our pre-con was Tuesday, Wednesday load in. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I think Origins, once they got a taste of our 3-day show, I think they're like, maybe we should just do a 3-day show. I was like,
Yeah.
You know what? It's the same thing, Bria, if you remember. I guess we haven't even introduced our special guest real fast. Bria, how are you?
I'm good. I'm a little sleepy. It's a little hot outside, but it's a beautiful Friday, and I'm video game. So
Awesome.
what could go wrong?
Yeah. Let's do a little housekeeping stuff real fast. So for those who are unaware, and I'm sure most of the world is because you don't keep, I'm sure you don't have your alerts set to what's going on in beautiful Columbus, Ohio, but we have power outages all week. So there is so far yesterday, got through most of the day after about 5 o'clock in the morning without any issues, but there is a possibility that we may lose our interwebs at any given time. So
Our cell data, that's been going in and out too.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I didn't have power, I didn't have internet, I didn't have cell, I couldn't make phone calls, I couldn't send texts. Truly a Mad Max world. But we are going to forge ahead. I feel good. The weather outside is not brutally hot. It's hot, but it's not brutally hot. But anyway, back to the thing. They remind PAX decided to become a 4-day show, and I think everyone was just like collectively like, oh, really?
I remember that year.
It's just a lot. 4 days is a lot. It's a lot for guests, organizers. It's a lot for exhibitors who are on the show floor 8 to 10 hours a day, talking constantly, shaking hands. And you always come down with, if it's not COVID, which I unfortunately tested positive today, so that was fun. There's always some sort of funk going around.
The con crud, the PAX box. I feel like 3 days is perfect. Friday is like, oh, I'm so excited to see all of my friends and the people, and there aren't as many people here, so we can like check stuff out. Saturday is like the blockbuster day, and then Sunday is like, all right, we're all pretty sleepy, we're winding down, it's time to say goodbye. 2 days of like fully pumped days. Just need one. One's plenty.
Yeah, totally. I think that so we'll see. There's some conversations on if we're going to switch to a 3-day event or keep it at a 4. There's also like the B stuff that we always do, so we can always do like the publisher day, publisher press day, and just not have the general access.
Public. Yeah.
Or we might have with the 4th day being open gameplay, so the exhibitors won't have to be on the floor. So lots of options. We'll figure it out. But Bria, were you able to make it to GDEX? I didn't see you this
year. No, it was on my birthday, and I didn't want to work on my birthday and think about work and audio and games and community. So I just had a potluck and hung out and next year. But
I'll get him.
I was sad. I was sad to miss it because I always really loved GDEX. But between my bad immune system and my birthday, I was like, next time,
Yeah.
give a talk next time. Is love to give talks. Didn't have the energy to give a talk this year.
Yeah, I hear you. Every year I'm like, I'm not going to sign up for a bunch of stuff, and then on Saturday I think I moderated like 4 panels.
Yeah,
I don't know why I did that.
I love those last minute moments because it like I feel like you get to form a good bond with whoever it is also in that panel. But yeah, it's a sleepy year. So I'll talk like tomorrow, and then it'll be so perfect and polished by the time GDEX rolls around that everyone will be blown away.
You're not
I
going to
don't
do
know.
that.
I have a 46 slide PowerPoint presentation right now that I could not get because some of it is internal, but I could reshape for GDEX in a year.
I doubt that you have that. I just like, there's no way you're going to spend the next 365 days. No. You'll do what the industry does, which is, okay, I got something coming up in a year, plenty of time. I got something coming up in 6 months, plenty of time.
And then week before, work on it. Yeah,
the number of texts I got from speakers. I'm in my hotel room working on my slides. I'm like, isn't your session in like 2 hours? Like, don't worry about it. I'm like, I'm not worried about it. It's your talk, man.
I used to love walking around the hall and seeing like friends on their laptops, like last minute editing their slides in silence in like little corners. It's the way of the world.
Yeah. We had, this is a great story. I'm going to kind of, I was going to say it. It's funny. I don't mean anything negative by it. But one of our speakers to see the room so he could get a gauge of the size, and he was like, this was like the first talk. So the number of people that we have that come to GDEX who are, you would be surprised, where this is like not only their first like speaking engagement ever, but sometimes it's their first convention ever, which I think is really cool. So this was his first convention and his first like speaking thing, and so he was like doing his slides. He's got he had his hands were doing the right things or whatever. And I thought it was so like cute, and he wanted to see the room and make sure he could like know the spacing of where he could walk and everything. So I showed him the room. Great. But he came in from the UK and we brought him in. He got connected through a GDEX person, and we brought him in, and excuse me, night, I get a call at like 12:30 at night, and I'm asleep, so like I don't answer it. And the next morning, I checked my phone. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I didn't get like a bunch of follow-up calls. Must not have been too big of a fire or whatever. Person who called me and bumped in, he's like, okay, so the speaker made it in. I was like, that's good. Sounds great. He's like, but he flew in from the UK. I'm like, okay, that's good, since that's where he came from. Cleveland. I'm like, oh, okay. And he took a taxi down from Cleveland to Columbus. I was like, oh, how much was that ride? You know? And I guess he, like folks in Europe land, don't quite know the size of the United States. And so our friend who was helping facilitate all this, I guess his wife sent an England overlaid on top of Ohio, and I was like, so this is where you flew into, and this is where you need to get to. And he was like, no. oh no. And
that's such an expensive taxi ride.
The other kicker too is apparently he used an agency to do it. I was like, they probably should have known that. Yeah, you think they would have been aware. You can't just like fly into Ohio. I mean, we've got airports, and 3 of them aren't an easy drive to.
I mean, like, I know we're Ohio, but come on. We're also Ohio.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's better than like flying into somewhere in Texas.
That's true.
you can generally get anywhere in Ohio in 2.5 hours or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just like, oh, sweetie, that sucks.
That's very stressful. Like when I was in school and I would take like public speaking courses for various public speaking things, I would check out the room. I would get like really comfortable in there because that's what they like recommend is like if you know your space and you're comfortable with your space, there are fewer things that are gonna like throw you off. But the wrong city would throw me off regardless of what the room looked like.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Oh.
part of public speaking is just one of those things that's like it's like the devil for some people. And anything you can do to get comfortable,
Mhm.
see the space, make sure um know your content. That's always a big
Mhm.
one,
Yeah.
right? But that you're comfortable is an important part. But yeah, so it was good. I think it was a good GDEX. Lucas, you survived it.
I did, but barely. I can tell you that the bed at my house was very comfy the last day. So
Nice. Are we having an audio issue, Lucas?
yeah, there's some going on. I'm trying to fix it, but it's just not.
Yeah.
Everything I'm doing is just not working.
If it's happening reoccurringly, it sounds like is your output um at then a high enough bit rate?
Yeah, it's at a high enough bit rate. I'm not dropping frames or anything like that, so it's just weird.
Hmm. Okay. Oh well.
Live troubleshooting.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
what I've been doing. So
Uh
Godspeed. Good luck.
yeah.
thank you, and thank you to everyone in the audience who's kind of given us feedback. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
We can just
Uh
scream into the microphone and see if that fixes it. Would that be good?
yeah, should I turn my volume up all the way to 100? I heard that goes really well.
Just
That
get
works
like
really well.
really close and do like ASMR.
That's usually what I
Yeah, oh no. Oh no.
do.
I actually get the like I know people like talk about ASMR and like enjoy listening to it, but my brain will actually like turn to static with certain noises and I'm like unable in the moment. I have to just like sit there I don't even have an appropriate metaphor. I just like zone out completely and fall asleep. So too much whispering. I will not be a helpful guest anymore.
Yeah, I don't find it an experience. I'm usually just like, okay, I'm going to turn you off now.
Makes my brain
Um,
feel weird.
I'm generally a quiet, unless I'm like rocking out to music. Like most of my existence tends to be like I hate phone alarms and stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
like when people are like texting and it's like ding every 2 seconds, and I'm sitting right next to them. I'm like, come on, man, 2022, put it on mute. Um, but Bria, you are a video gamer person. You've been
It's
in the
true.
industry now for a while.
It's true.
You and I have known each other for close to a decade, I think. Something. It's been
Yeah,
8 years.
sophomore year of college, so 2014. Yeah.
About
Wow.
8 years.
8 years. Long
Time.
time.
It's
Time flies.
fluting on by. So what do you? Excuse me. I'm gonna try not to cough, but that Rona gets you every time.
Yeah, she'll get you.
Uh, so what are you? What have you been involved in lately? You've been a busy bee.
It's true. Yeah, I early on in the pandemic, I was working like locally for a screen printing shop, and I they wanted us to come back into the office, and I didn't want to do that, so I started sort of sniffing around for other opportunities. Um, and I, up until the pandemic, had done some like volunteer moderating in the Finji server. Finji being a video game publisher that's published Chicory, A Colorful Tale, Night in the Woods, House, Tunic recently is the one that a lot of folks are talking about. So I was friends with the folks over there. And then the folks over at Young Horses who made Octodad just recently released Bug Snacks were looking for a
Bugsnake.
community person. And I was like, I like talking to people and also moderating them. And they took a chance
Also
on me.
moderating them.
Yes, love to boundaries with people online that don't understand them. It's a very valuable and rewarding experience to have the tools to manage a conversation. Um, and at the same time, I was volunteering for Baseball over at the game band. I was moderating their Discord because Felix, who was the producer for Tunic with Finji, was also working at the game band because Felix works with everybody and knows everybody. And they were like, hey, off in a way we didn't expect. Does anybody want to help us out? And I was like, sure. I'm stuck in my house during the pandemic, whatever. So I was sort of moderating Finji, moderating Baseball, part-time working for Young Horses. I eventually quit my job at the screen printing studio when Baseball got funding, and I was brought on full-time as the community director. So right now I community director for the game band, for Baseball. I work in the Young Horses Discord servers, their community manager. Primarily, we talk about bug snacks because Octodad was from a long time ago. And I'll do some freelance for Finji when they need some extra like art assets or like writing for like Steam stuff. So I get around. Got my hands in lots of pies.
Yeah, I mean, you made a space for yourself. I mean, the people you were. I mean, Finji's awesome. Bex is awesome. Like the team there is great. I've chatted with some of the Young Horses folks before, and they're a good group of folks to hitch your wagon to, as they say.
Games is a bit of a hellscape sometimes, so finding good people that care about their employees and about their product is really valuable, and I'm really grateful to have folks around me that can set that example and that I can learn from.
Learning things is good.
Love to learn.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, there we go. I think the folks in the games industry are trying to do their best and they want to do good things, particularly in the indie space. If you can brush some of the egos away, I suppose, that you
the auteurs that don't respect anybody but other people that are like them and only want to make things that they're interested in. Yeah. There are a lot of good folks in indie spaces, and there are a lot of good intentions too. I found that intentions don't stop burnout as much as like structural and like meaningful things in place to help employees and to help with development. So I'm happy both exist, but I'm happy to have both at the places that I work with.
Yeah. Setting up, we had a building your business panel at GDEX. We talked a little bit about the importance of, we talked about some of the things you mentioned, but setting up processes that can be helpful, as well as sort of on the leadership end, setting up people management. But yeah, I mean, managing community. So I feel very fortunate that like, so for example, some of the changes and stuff that happened in the weeks to GDEX, received like 0 negative comments from our community. No one in our community was really, a couple people responded to, strangely enough, to some of our ads, which still blows. Respond to a sponsored post on, but you know, whatever.
Everybody needs a hobby.
Wherever you got to throw your, it's like, and maybe it's just because I'm old, but I feel like putting negative comments into a promoted post, the TV at like a Coke commercial, like you're still watching it, you know, they still got your eyeballs. But by and large, I think that the community is very positive. Does not always extend to every community, and we did have a few concerns this year. You can follow it on the interwebs if you want to go through Twitter, but one of the special guests was being canceled during the event, which then became a part of, it was a like husband and wife team, which then became a part of that, which then became, it just cascaded as it does in the interwebs. I was like, I'm happy to help you guys out however I can, but like in my back of my mind, I'm like, oh man, so glad I don't have to deal with that. Because community management, which I guess is something that seems to be a for you, which is good. I find it to be a draining one.
It I feel like community management is really complicated because it's something that I feel like I'm very good at, and it's something I feel like uniquely able to do. But it's also, I mean, it's customer service on a really large scale with an easy target on your back. And it's also like I feel like you have control over the spaces and the like guidelines that you're facilitating within a community that like long term will either like hurt or help you when things happen. But at the same time, being the person that is in charge of a thing that is deeply personal to many people is rewarding and also, you know, exhausting. Like I think there's a reason most community managers have such high turnover in like their positions, or that like they leave the industry after like a few years because of the burnout. Like I think there's just a level of exposure to people constantly that can be like really taxing if you don't have a team invested in your well-being, or you don't have support, or you know, the community that existed before you got there that you didn't get to has very different values, and you have to sort of shift that gradually without burning yourself up into nothing.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits, if you want to call it that, that maybe is like the community around GDEX and the Central Ohio Game Dev Group and stuff like that. More or less, we started, right?
Yeah.
Which is different than like Origins, which has been around for 47 years now, 46,
Yeah.
47. So the people that are coming onto that are inheriting not only sort of the direction and the momentum of the company and the community, but also the history and the baggage
Yep.
that comes along with it. Whereas we've had the ability to like sort of prune our roses as
Yeah.
we go about, make sure our garden is moving in a good direction.
Mhm.
Which is I think ultimately what, how do I phrase this? So I think one of the interesting things about there's a couple interesting things about our industry, but of
Yeah, where
note,
do we begin?
in this topic is it tends to be from a consumer base. It tends to be, you know, average age of like a video game purchasers in their early 40s, which you're like, oh, that's not young. But when you think about other products like healthcare and insurance and cars, like the average age of the car is significantly higher. Which means that you're going to have to, it's a maturity issue, right? And I think that that's something that you kind of have to navigate. And I view like responsibility with, at least within the confines of the community and in GDEX itself, as like an event, right? Like a thing that happens during a particular time, that like it's part of my responsibility to help folks and set expectations about what is acceptable. And I mean, more or less with the team that works at Multivarious and with GDEX, like we sort of set that up. If I don't like it, I get to wave you goodbye, which is kind of nice. But it is something, because I think the other part of that you're probably dealing with more so than I am is just the ability to get with content and opinions through social media. And you mentioned Discord, like it's just the ability for people to just continually send in negative, you know, content. How do you have like a system that you've set up to kind of handle that? Or because it can be a lot, it literally is a flood sometimes.
Yeah. So fortunately, in all of the spaces that I work in, nature of the product or by like work from other folks, I feel pretty fortunate. Like most people are very respectful. Like I think there's also a distinction to be made between like negativity is being directed with like good intentions or with the intent of like improving a product or raising an issue that may not have been considered, versus just like we have to be positive all the time and accept every change, like, and be happy. I think that's
Sure.
really key, is to
I think,
establish like that trust and respect.
yeah, my
But
background in art we do constructive criticism, and it's
Yep.
specifically called that because if it's not constructive, venting or it's
Yes.
cruelty.
Yeah, and I think that distinction is something that with baseball, like I've been working pretty hard to communicate and distinguish with our audience because our audience does, I think, by virtue of it being a live game, there are just like multiple opportunities for people to feel something about something and then try to raise it. The way that we handle it on the Discord, a private feedback channel. So people can go to a channel if they do have feedback and they can write a message. It is eaten by a bot, and then they will get a DM from that bot that asks them to confirm that they've like met specific, pretty clear like expectations for what we consider valuable feedback. So, like it needs to be focused on telling us about your like personal experience, or you like need to point to something directly. It's still helpful if you go like it just, because that tells us at least that there's something that we can improve upon. But you can't like break server roles. You can't just be an asshole. You can't like just use that as a space to exert your feelings on an easy target. Of how people choose to use it, it is then deposited in a private channel that only the moderators have access to. It wasn't always private, and what we found was that a lot of users were using that as an opportunity to earn social cookie points. Like they weren't writing feedback that was constructive, they were writing feedback to try to get enough social support from other people to like garner sway in whether or not their opinion was valuable than others, which just meant that we weren't getting as good feedback. So
Sure.
private is great because it also means if people do break those guidelines, we have an easy way to moderate them, but without it causing ripples in. But there's also a level of, I feel like one of the biggest things that I've been learning a lot lately is that it's okay to just tell someone, like, it's okay that you feel that way, and I'm acknowledging that you feel this way about a piece of a product, but it doesn't mean that it's bad or that it has to change. And I feel like that is a learning curve for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think that tethers onto a couple important things. One is something I tell my students is like people are, when doing something, for example, people are great at telling you that there is something wrong with a product or something isn't working. Gamers, players are terrible about telling you how to fix it, And I think really easy, and we've all done this on the software side, it's really easy to get caught in that loop where like you keep hearing that something's wrong and then you keep feeling like you need to fix something or work on something, and you get caught in that loop that never ends. Your first point, I think a lot of times if people just feel that they're heard, like I acknowledge what you are saying, I don't necessarily agree, or even if I agree, we may not be at a part in the development cycle where we can,
right,
there are logistical procedural parts of game development that just we can't jump in and fix every issue right away.
Yeah, and I think there's also a huge factor, at least with like a lot of the audiences that are, I feel like online there's been a trend to associate criticism and also media consumption with morality. And so the idea that someone like something in a game is then like, oh, you've done a bad thing and this is like hurting people. And like sometimes that is very much the case and should be like listened to and acted on. But sometimes there needs to be a distinction between like, if I'm setting a boundary with you that a private company owns, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that this behavior is like not appropriate for the space. Or like you having a negative experience with this game is not necessarily a reflection of our morality. It could just be a preference thing. And so I think sharpening the skills to be able to distinguish what is meaningful harm and like meaningful activism or like meaningful constructive criticism versus like someone that's just looking for a way to feel control over a circumstance is also like a huge part, I feel like, of feedback and community management.
Yeah. I've got control versus guidance, as we're gonna jump into that pool in a minute. Yeah. But yeah, no, I agree. I think that hey baby, how you doing, sweetie? I got distracted. I got dog distracted. Where were we?
Happens to the best of us. I understand.
It does. She gets me every time. I think that this going back to sort of the youngins helping to guide them, like you wouldn't believe. Well, I was gonna say you wouldn't believe, but you probably do. The kinds of emails I get sometimes,
Yeah.
where
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just like, in what world would it possess you to send this email to your professor? You
Yeah.
know, and I keep a pretty informal. I mean, you've worked with me and for me. I try to keep
Mhm.
formal, but like at the end of the day, like I'm still your professor, right? I'm
Yeah.
still your boss. At some point, we may need to do that. It's just like this email looks like you wrote it in a drunken stupor to like your bud at 2 a.m. You know, it
Oh,
just
yeah.
it's crazy.
I get a
Um,
lot more of like younger. So baseball and Bug Snacks and Fingy Games all have pretty like younger queer audience. So because we're like a like trusted and like prominent face in the community, we'll get a lot of younger people having like mental health crises or like conflicts with their parents or like conflicts with their
sure.
friends or that support in some kind of space and navigating boundaries and
Yeah.
roles and like job descriptions while also trying to be, an empathetic human being and understand that this person is struggling is always an interesting place to navigate and find yourselves
Yeah.
in and
I
setting
get,
boundaries on what's your responsibility and what isn't is cool
yeah,
and fun.
yeah, totally, totally. I think again, Ben, I've had a weird, just work life. So like I worked
Mhm.
at Department of Public Safety for 8 years. I dealt with a lot of issues, a lot of mental instability, domestic
Mhm.
violence, those kind of things. I also worked in health 8 or 9 years. So you deal with a lot of personal information, a lot of people who are in positions where they are, possibly the most scared they've ever been in their
Yeah.
life about potential things. And then, of course, teaching, I've um, had to help bring students to, mental health services or things like that.
Mhm.
Same with the community. And I think you sort of tethered on or talked about this a little bit before, but I think there is a sense, and this is one of the things I don't like about sort of the internet and the barriers for entry kind of thing, is that there's a sense that like you should be able to solve all problems all the time.
Mhm.
And sometimes the makes you feel like you should be the one to solve that problem. And I see this a lot of times in like YouTubers and influencer networks and stuff where like their community is they're like, well, I thought you cared about me. I thought you were, family or my internet family or whatever. But like the issues that person is dealing with are well beyond the scope of what a
Yeah.
person should be able to assist on. And we've had that, and knowing where that line is and being like, it's boundaries is an important part. Like, look, I care for you. I might love you, yet way yada yada, but like I am not prepared or
Yeah.
skilled to be able to handle this situation.
Yeah.
Um, and knowing where that line seems like that line is very amorphous sometimes in the internet world, in the social media world.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
I've been thinking a lot about platforms lately and how yeah, and how a lot of our modern like online spaces are specifically catered, it feels like, to exacerbate this because like at the end of the day for a platform, that engagement is sort of what people want out of it on any large scale, whether it's because they got like venture funding and they need to like return on investors, or it's because
people
that's how they get
being
ad
the
revenue. Like,
creators.
yeah, or just like Twitter engagement, like Instagram
Yeah.
wants you to engage with their stuff.
And the people
Um,
promoting on it,
yeah,
they want to
right.
see the analytics that this, which I get. Like,
Yeah.
when I do advertising on, we do Twitter, but like use our local radio station or
Hmm.
magazines, like I want an analytics report
Yeah.
on what my dollar looked like.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
completely. No, so it all like makes sense, but I think because it feels like these online spaces are trying to like encourage engagement and like constant engagement, it just makes being online worse. Like Discord, I feel like a Discord with like 20 good friends or like 100 that are like relatively active is a beautiful place. But as soon as you get above a certain scale, this space that like constantly encourages people to post 24/7, that doesn't have an off button, that has an expectation that people are responsible, like caretake it, or like on Twitter, the like constant engagement is prioritized over like nuanced conversation or like
Well, the
just not
internet's in place
clicking
for
on
nuance, Bria.
something. I know. One can hope, but I feel like
I
because of the way that those spaces is structured, it just exacerbates a lot of those issues of like feeling ownership towards creators and feeling like parasocial relations and feeling like because you have access and are encouraged to engage from a platform perspective, that means from like a human perspective, this behavior is also okay. And it's all brain poison.
Yeah, yeah. I think I can't remember what there was that quote unquote documentary that came out. It was a little like down the rabbit hole, but um, I mean, it was like humans weren't meant to receive this amount of just stimuli input all the time.
Yeah.
And I feel fortunate that like, you know, I'm 40. Well, yeah, not 41 yet, 40. Couple days. Growing up at the beginning of the internet, I remember what like it really was like a beautiful time. The potential was like look at all these neat things that we could do. Like, you know, literally I mean, Wikipedia and just all this information on your phone. But it turns out that that's not the type of information that spreads because knowledge and self-reflection and hard work and empathy, it requires you being vulnerable, and it requires you taking the time to do the necessary research. And that's no good. That's no good. We don't have time for that.
Yeah.
But it's weird too, because they're just, and it's a case of I mean, I consider myself fortunate that I've, you know, pretty strong educational background where I've got a good filtering mechanism where I can just like look at stuff on the internet. I was like, nonsense. It's like, I don't even need to spend time to know that this black and white image of somebody with writing over it attributed to somebody that's not of the image is not probably correct. You know, was that Bo Burnham thing, the quote that's from Lord of the Rings or whatever.
Oh yeah, during hit song White Woman's Instagram comedy special Inside. I was in
now on Netflix.
Bo Burnham's top 2% of last year on Spotify because I just
really?
listened to Inside over and over and over again.
Oh, of course, I guess the album's on. I watched the video, and I've seen a couple of them on YouTube or whatever, but it never occurred to me on Spotify. But
it hits the niche for me of like show tunes, but also in my range. Like I'm not trying to keep up with Idina Menzel. I'm trying to keep up with Bo Burnham, which I can do.
Yeah.
And the lyrics are really, for all of his previous content that he and many perhaps wish could have been different. The man knows how to write a good, catchy lyric. So
sure. Well, he makes a notion on that too. Songs, right? But also, again, this goes back to sort of kindness and empathy. Like, do you expect an 18-year-old kid to have 2022 values?
Right.
And that, of course, that's assuming that we even understand what 20 are. But you know, that's where you give people the room, particularly artists. The whole point is to try to like push the boundaries of things and find out where lines are and whatnot.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, the older I get, I think the more that I really value being able to just engage with media critically, like to watch something maybe like problematic, and be able to acknowledge like this is where this went wrong, this is why this is harmful, but like I'm choosing to watch this with a critical eye and then also understand like the cultural of this piece of media, or you know, like I think there's a huge push with that like media morality thing I mentioned to also only consume like quote unquote like perfect or unproblematic media, and
you're going to be in a pretty gray room.
like nothing exists in a bubble. Like there's going to be a problem with something all the time, and I think it's much more worthwhile to be able to develop a skill to be able to critique things and then also still appreciate other aspects of it. You know, art,
Yeah, really. Are
media.
we
We
are
love
we
it.
all are we all maturing, Bria? Is that what we're all doing here?
We
Trying.
can hope. We can dream of such things.
I always joke I'm waiting for like the big Weird Al Yankovic. Like,
Oh yeah,
what's the thing? I mean, certain things come out of nowhere, even though it
yeah,
was, I guess, pretty well known. But yeah, so far Weird Al seems like he's in the clear.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's part of part is you can look at. So for example, like this is a weird example, but like people are in love with H.P. Lovecraft stuff right now, right? Stranger Things and like
Right. Yeah.
all the Eldritch stuff that's going on. But like that dude was like
Racist as
straight. Yeah, I mean he was straight up racist and anti-Semitic. Like there was no
mm,
like if ands or buts about it.
yeah.
But
The Eldritch horror was just people of color to him, which is fucking
yeah,
gross. Oh, sorry. Can I cuss?
yeah. But I mean
Heckin' gross.
there was a lot of interesting conceptual work that he did within the confines. So you kind of just got to like weave through some of the stuff. You can't expect everything. I mean, some of my favorite, obviously I grew up in the 80s. And so some of my media that I loved, and I still love, I was just like, yeah, that didn't age very well. But it's like you don't need to, uh, I guess, but you can acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And then there's also the other side of the coin. We're going way down the river here, but
Yeah.
there's
Let's
also the
go.
other side of the coin,
Responsible
which is
consumption. Let's go.
yeah, but like content that is designed to be uncomfortable or
Mm,
whatnot, and just like the idea of being able to separate like the content from the message from the artist is a skill. Like you
mm,
can read something like, I mean, there's, I don't know, Huck Finn or whatever is like doused and lousy with racism, right? But that's also kind of about
mhm.
the idea within the narrative. This isn't a book club, so we don't need to go.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I think the question of like art versus artist is one that ends up coming down to a personal level for a lot of folks. And like for me, it's also media specific, like I think to think about like Minecraft media where like the creator is a garbage person, but doesn't make any money from it anymore. And also the like game that involves the funny blocks and the zombie guys and the pig isn't actively advocating for those values. But if you think about like Harry Potter and I think it's pretty hard to separate J.K. Rowling from something that I loved growing deeply anti-Semitic and like pretty racist and like pretty
I'm just
transphobic.
out of curiosity, where do you get the anti-Semitism from? I'm just kind of curious.
The goblins with huge work in a bank and control all of the money and like
No.
a secret power structure would be what I would pick the anti-Semitism
Okay. I
Semitism
mean,
as.
yeah, I'm just curious because that was a Jon Stewart thing that came out last year,
Yeah,
and
that's
he was very clear. He's like, I'm not saying it's anti-Semitic. He was
yeah.
just, and that's another thing too, is like within like all of that stuff is now we're talking like we're in Tolkien, right? Which
Mhm.
is of course
The inherent racism of
everything's a
fantasy.
derivative of something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got
Let's
all
talk
that.
about racism in D&D too while we're here.
Yeah. So I mean, you got to grab things like Ender's Game is one of my favorite books. Orson Scott
Mhm.
Card has his challenges for sure, but I still think that there's a lot to learn from the sort of conceptual narration game. But all of that ultimately comes down, I think, to your point from, I don't know, 20 minutes ago, which is you get to set your community's expectations. You get to kind of decide what you find to be acceptable. But what I'm going to throw at you, I'm curious your take on is, because this is something that I constantly have to like, I have to like check myself against and like figure is like, you have to be receptive of other people's thoughts and feelings while setting expectations for what you think is acceptable, while still being open to changing your thought. It's an interesting loop that in a perfect world should be a cooperative endeavor, but oftentimes, and maybe it's a reflection of just the times or the country we live in, oftentimes it becomes adverse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious how you think about navigating those challenges of setting expectations and helping people, guiding them. This is where the control versus kind of guiding a community comes in, versus still being receptive to new ideas and acknowledging that perhaps, you need to rethink something.
Yeah, I mean, so my general process when it comes to in like work or out of work conversations like this is I try to take every piece of feedback at like face value. Like this person is coming to me in good faith, concern about this, and I should look at it.
So you
And
just
someone has
assume
taken
it's always a good faith argument. You don't bother.
this is just step one. Is like
Okay.
I'm baseline.
We're just getting started here.
Yeah, like baseline to me in like a work context. I am hoping that we've built enough like trust and respect that if someone is coming to me, they are coming to me not to just like make a problem or, whatever, but is genuinely want to be heard about this.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that we'll listen or act on it? Does that mean that I think that they're right? No, but I think like it's really important for like me as an individual to like meet people where they are, at least, when I'm in my own life, it comes down to like, do I trust your insights on things? Do I feel like you have a good handle on stuff? Because if my like friends, alt-right dad is going to raise a concern that I've spoken about one of my friends, like I'm going to put it in the garbage can and close the lid and knock it down the street. But in a work context, I think it's important to be like, okay,
yeah,
what is this person saying? And strip away sort of tone and just try to get to the meat of like, what do I think this person's trying to communicate to me? And from there, I think it's important to just evaluate like, is this something we can meaningfully do? Is this something that we want to do? Is this something that and like, is this something that needs to be passed on to the team? Sometimes someone just wants to be heard. Sometimes someone's like, I've had this accessibility issue and I like want somebody to do something about it. And I'll go, great, yeah, I'll pass it on to the team. Like, I think when it comes to especially like issues of marginalization, it can be really easy to write off people that are not phrasing feedback or concerns in a socially acceptable, soft way. Like it's of course easier to receive feedback where someone goes like, hello, I just wanted to raise this to you because it like brought concerns up to me and I hope that you will like consider making these changes. Like that's of course very easy to respond to. But
and to be fair, some people are pretty good at that.
Yes, I feel like pretty good at couching rage that I have in polite professional language when I need to. But
we're all just a rat in a cage, Bria.
Truly. But when it comes to like younger folks and also folks that are experiencing like being marginalized by somebody else or, a situation of racism, I think it would be a shame if we were to evaluate people's concerns based on the fact that they're angry, because there's a reason that they're angry. And so for me, it's really important to sort of get to the core nugget of what their feedback is, because I think it's a skill, but at a certain point, you're pretty able to distinguish like, oh, this person has experienced something that is racist or that is like sexist or that is transphobic, to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Sure.
And distinguishing that between like, oh, this person has interpreted this piece of media incorrectly and then has formed an idea about what that means and is now upset at me about it, even though and there's a different response to that than the first one.
Yeah. Well, and there's two things in that too, which is one is sometimes so back in my public health world, it's important to get community feedback on every initiatives. Or COVID, I think, has illustrated that very well. And the things, it's just like when you look at an Amazon review, generally the people that respond to forums are people who really love something or who are really angry at something, right? Yeah. And sometimes, so the people that are angry, sometimes the people that are angry for whatever particular thing it is might be the most mild-mannered folk in the world, and just something they've finally gotten past the line where they're like, I'm not going to take this anymore, or this has become important to me. And you're only seeing them in angry dragon
moment of weakness.
Yeah.
I think it's also something that I imagine if you were to tie a manager down and ask them how fans have been responding to things in the past few years versus before, I feel like there's a lot more there. Figure out how to articulate this. I feel like the well that people have for tolerance of things that make them uncomfortable or upset them is low because of the pandemic. Like, I have a lot of teenagers in my circle, their senior year of high school, or like couldn't have their freshman year of college, or like hadn't been into school for years, and now they're in schools, and like everybody has brain worms to the max because
I'll just
people
burn out.
for like everybody's burned out and exhausted, and sometimes the response that you're getting from somebody online has nothing to do with what you've done or what you've made, and has everything to do with the fact there and you caught them at a certain time and they just need a way to feel like they can control something in their lives. And I think it's really important to be able to distinguish that as well and understand that, like, everybody's going through the cheesy phrase, but it's also like being able to separate feedback from like personal attacks is also, I think, a really good skill for community folks to be able to distinguish that.
Totally. Hard. Like, this is
sure is.
Yeah, I think that again goes back with just the ability to. So I have this theory that I've talked about before, but that I think the issues around social media is just the barriers for entry, the accessibility, just the being able to put out whatever you want, whenever you want, at any given time, which is, I mean, that's supposed to be of, a free speech world, and that you're not regulated by some authority, right? Like, that's supposed to be the nice part of it. But I think about like my parents, or even when I was growing up, I got my first cell phone, I don't know, late high school, like senior year, like 99, something like that. But before that, if you were pissed off about something, you just yelled at your friend about it for 20 seconds and then you went on, because like, what else were you going to do, right? You weren't going to post about it. And now we're able to kind of like stew in these juices for forever and ever. And I don't think it's positive. So like things like GDEX, for example, or any of our products, I'll do these, like, I'll go through and look at comments. I'll look at comments on these videos. I'll kind of like scan through, and I just do like a quick analysis. Okay, positive, whatever. If I see something of note, I might, like, I don't know, kick it to Lucas to like look at. But after that, I walk away. I want to get caught in, my life is too valuable. Everyone else's life is too valuable. I don't want to get caught in yet another Facebook argument about public health efforts from somebody who I didn't see sitting next to me in my classes, like, it doesn't do anybody any good.
I think being able to assign your energy to the battles that you feel are most worthwhile is good.
I think that's a big thing. Like, with someone in a relationship, like, picking your battles is a big thing. And even picking your battles isn't like, it gets the idea across. And I'm not, I try not to get too caught on semantics, because I think everything in language is just similes and metaphors and analogies.
It's all nonsense.
Yeah. But I think that the picking your battles as an idea, I think, is good, but also remembering that, like, the person you're in a relationship with is not your enemy, right?
Oh yeah.
You're enemy. Like, the person across from you on the computer is not your enemy.
The person on Twitter is my enemy, though, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some people on Twitter. There's a few people on Twitter.
Elon Musk is my enemy. But everyone else.
And so I think that's one of the other things too, where, like, one of the things I don't like, and we don't need to go down the Elon Musk hole.
You don't want me to go down the Elon Musk hole. One of the mean things about that man.
I don't like about this idea is, like, these like snarky responses, the jokes, the whatever. It's like, for me, I think the importance of free speech is designed to protect unpopular speech. That's the reason that it exists. You undo that sort of good-natured, best-intention effort if you're also using it to just constantly make snarky remarks and you're like intentionally just trying to get people revved up. That's like, all right, you making X number of millions of people upset. Great. Now, did that accomplish anything? Is the world a better place because of that? Are those people more or less likely to listen to you in the future about anything? Like, I just like I'll rib people, you know, as a joke if they're like friends or whatever a little bit, but like it's good intentioned, it's good natured, and it lasts all of like 10 seconds. Yeah. But like if you're using the rile people up, I don't know, it just seems like you're wasting a lot of people's energies on things that could probably be more. But that's just my take on it. But I also don't use Twitter very often, so you probably use more Twitter in an hour than I do in a week.
I had to delete it from my phone because it was only showing me threads about long COVID, and I was having anxiety dreams, and I was like, I need a minute. But
it's
I
awful.
think
I've started. I've noticed emails from Reddit now, which I don't know why I'm getting them like now instead of forever. But like I will, before I invite guests, or like I kind of scan through the guests I invite. I scan through their. I want to get to know them better. Like I want to know what they're interested in, kind of what they're talking about and stuff. And now I'm just getting like bombarded with all these like different Reddit posts for all these people that like I've invited to GDEX, and some are like bitching about whatever and arguing, and I'm just like, delete. I don't need to, but I have to look at it, you know?
Yeah, I think like,
what do you call it? Brainworms?
Yeah, brainworms. I think my distinction is like, if it doesn't matter, I'm with you. I also think that like, asterisks, of course, social media can be a really valuable tool for like bullying politicians into doing things, which, here for bullying for just clip that one.
We're live.
I don't know. My policy on that kind of stuff is just a funny tweet from guest Justin McElroy that says free speech is supposed to protect you from the government, not the Justin. And I think that that's very funny of like, yeah, you can say whatever stupid you want to say, but it also doesn't mean that you're free from like repercussions or from people pushing back.
Oh, totally. No, I don't think that. I don't think that at all.
I'm adding.
Adding.
Yeah.
Yes, and.
Yes, and no.
Yes,
Twitter
and.
bad for brain. A nuance good for brain. Touching grass also good for brain. Love to touch grass.
Yeah,
makes me feel calm.
I have sort of a checklist. I say this like I know what I'm talking about. Like actually, I joked about like the hoity-toity thing is I read French philosophy or whatever. But like I caught myself. I read Descartes, and I'm reading right now. I was just like, oh my god, have I become that guy? But I think it's Descartes, and somebody can correct me. Tom's on here; he can correct me if I'm wrong. But there's sort of this thing, which is whenever you're going to say anything, you ask yourself three things: is it true? Is it necessary? And it's kind of like a little checklist to see if what you're about to say is valuable to the conversation in some way. And obviously, not everything you say has to go through that checklist. Otherwise,
sure. Sometimes it's nice to be a little mean, but only instances. And only for
but also
purpose.
Like with your friends, like it's a different world, different. And whatnot. And I think people kind of understand that. I've got a friend who's like, she's like this quiet little, I don't want to say mousy, I don't think that's the right word, but kind of a quiet woman. But man, every so often she comes up with like just the best off-color joke, and you're like, that was pretty good.
I have a few friends like that where the whole conversation, hanging out, and then they'll make like the perfect horrible pun, and everyone will yell at them.
I
love you.
Do you still have your love of puns?
I do. It's still on my business card. I mean, baseball is like 70% puns, and most of them don't come from me, but a few of them have. And I've never felt so rewarded than making a pun that impresses the these 3-layer, like, multi-interpretational puns that are also, like, serious story beats within the context of Blazeball.
Yeah,
It's great.
that's awesome.
It's great. Blazeball's wild.
We're getting close to being done here. We've gone on a wild and woolly ride, which I've enjoyed. We did have one question here. Season 24 of Blazeball wrapping up still? Question mark.
Oh no, Blazeball has been on. We call it siesta, like in between arcs. We basically finished up the beta of Blazeball during season 24 last year, and then have been working on developing the new era, which is like a television. So it's like a new story arc, but it's also our like 1.0 launch. So we're releasing it on a brand new mobile app that no one's seen before. We redid the entire website. We rebuilt the from scratch, which is meaningful to people that have played Blazeball. But if you have not played Blazeball, those are just words, but is a big task.
It's all just words. It's words all the way down.
It's all gravy. But coming back this fall with a new storyline, but season 24 wrapped up in a wild and chaotic way where teams were piloting their ballparks on a map on the website and then eventually into a black hole and into a new universe. So we'll be picking up where that left off.
Nice. Tom also says, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Seems to be some paraphrased loosely sorts Buddha related. I might be the Buddha reincarnated. Who knows?
It could be Brene Brown too. Sounds like something she would say.
So the last little thing when we wrap up, because mentioning, I actually had a conversation about this, but this sort of tethers into the artist thing and the J.K. Rowling thing. But I sort of, there's this weird ownership, despite what Disney wants. There's a dynamic between artist and audience, whereas once something's out there, it's not fully the artist's anymore. It becomes a part of sort of the human story. And so I guess just quickly as we wrap up, sort of your take on something like Harry Potter. I went to Harry Potter World 2018 and it was amazing. And I still like Harry Potter. I watch it once, the movies I watch once a year, but like I wouldn't be passing any trivia contests, I don't think. But
right.
That sort of distinction where does something become a part of, where does art just become a part of the human story and where you from it afterwards, despite the artist themselves, maybe, living past the artist,
It's it's a big question. I think part of it comes when the artist is dead. If they're still alive and can still actively participate in a conversation about their work, that's a whole different ballgame than the work being complete and ended, and there is like no new ways to reinterpret or ruin your legacy with a piece of media. I think if the artist is still alive and still actively engaging with the thing that they've made, the level of responsibility and a level of ownership in this like broader conversation that we need to factor in when consuming media. I don't know if I feel like it truly separates itself from the like I don't, at least the way that I consume things, I don't know if there's a way that it ever truly does. Like I still think about the Bible and the people that wrote the things and how that impacts it, and it has certainly taken on a life of its own, but I feel like conversations about what and how a thing was made or who made that are inextricable, at least a comprehensive conversation about a piece of media. Like you can talk about,
sure,
I don't know, the new Beasts movies from Harry Potter without talking about J.K. Rowling, but maybe you should. Maybe you should. I don't know. I think it's very personal as well, but I just think that on an individual scale, I think people can separate the art from the artist for their own piece of media, and I understand why people would do that. on a like community scale, if a person is still profiting from it, if a person is still involved in the conversation from it, if like still sort of an active impact that the way that that person behaved or felt or thought or made something impacts real people in the real world in any meaningful way, I don't feel like sex is ethical. Might be a little dramatic, but I think it's important when you have a conversation about a piece of media to understand the context from whence it came, which is a
Sure.
long answer. Hopefully answers your question.
That works. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up since we're a little late. Bria, it has been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I had no idea what we were getting into, but I enjoyed it tremendously.
Here we are.
Here we are. I always ask on our way out, is there any last things you want to talk about? And if somebody wants to connect with you or get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
People want to connect with me, they can follow me on Twitter. I am at the Void Encore, VOIDENCORE. And plug wise, play Bugsnax. It's fun, it's cute, it's good. Baseball's if it's something that you've heard about and you have no idea what it is, and it always seemed overwhelming. This new era is going to be a really good place to jump on because we have sort of stripped it down, re-simplified it, and built it with experience being welcoming in mind. So pick a team, become a fan of that team, and cheer them on. Fight some gods. It'll be great.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back into Bugsnax. I played like maybe 30 minutes roughly when it came out, and then I got busy, and so it's been on my list. I got to platinum that bad boy.
Yeah, we just released a great additional content update that adds like a few more hours. There's now a very big bunger, which is great. But now there's regular bunger, there's barbecue bunger, and there's bunger supreme. So what more could you want?
So, bungers.
It is. Oops, all bunger.
Well, Bria, thank you again for being a part of the show. Thank you, everybody, for watching the Volpe Creates show. We will be back next Friday at 1. I swear we for GDEX because Lucas and I were running around like crazy people, and we just could not get the time to get set up and stuff. But we will be back next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time at twitch.tv creates. So on behalf of Bria, myself, Baby Girl, Pumpkin, Mr. Lucas, I want to thank you all for watching and have a great weekend.
Bye, y'all.